Coming up, an inside look into the reopening of Miami-Dade and Broward schools as we transition into Phase 2 of the school board's reopening plans. A deep dive inside the current atmosphere of NBA teams battling systemic racism and social injustice. Lastly, we shine some light on the stigma concerning mental health and learning to search for the signs of someone who is struggling. All this and more on Moss in Depth. Good morning, Miami Art Studio. Welcome to the first episode of Moss in Depth. I'm Maddie Guas, and this is a brand new series where we take a deeper dive into the more interesting and complicated stories out in our community. For our first story, we have Dylan Masvidal guiding us through what our new normal is set to look like as schools proceed back into a physical classroom environment.
Are we ready for accepting illnesses and death of teachers and students as part of our new normal?
An official announcement released on the 11th of September informed students and parents that MDCPS will be cutting ties with the K-12 program due to multiple complications that have arisen throughout the first weeks of school. Additionally, Governor DeSantis has plans to move the state into Phase 2, an announcement that insinuates the physical reopening of schools, a decision that has been met with vocal debate amongst the community. As we shift to yet another learning period in our school year, we learn to adjust to our new normal. As schools have already started to implement the mandates in place to abide the social distancing rules, administration is ready to reintroduce their students back into the abandoned hallways. Although most schools are prepped to hit the ground running, families are still unsure whether the looming pandemic will make schools safe enough for the arrival of their children.
Right now, it's hard to do that. I hear teachers want to jump through the screen and grab their students because they want to make sure, are they grasping the concept? So I believe meeting the needs of the student is something that is a very difficult task to do through remote learning.
It isn't just Moss parents who have expressed uncertainty about sending their children back. Several parents all across MDCPS have voiced their concern at last week's public board meetings. Each meeting lasted hours at a time in hopes to cover all of the student, parent, and teacher concerns.
And all the school does is have to say that they will sanitize and continue operating. The unpredictable nature of the way this virus manifests itself in different people. I do not support opening schools at this time. I'm very concerned about going back on site. Today, September 11th, I went to school and had a Zoom meeting with my students. The sound and internet were glitchy. My students lost me and couldn't hear me.
Gaining information truly on an hour-by-hour basis, Moss has already started to instill the preliminary physical elements needed to abide by the Phase 2 guidelines. We spoke to Dr. Balsera, who gave us an outlook on what the school reopening will look like for students returning physically and also for those who will be choosing to stick to the virtual platform.
People would expect when they return to school, which is number one, primarily is the mask. Everyone will be required to wear a mask in school, in class, in the hallways. In our hallways, we're going to have one way going up the stairs, one way going down the stairs. So there's going to be a lot of signs and a lot of getting used to, I guess, at the beginning. So the kids that are staying online will actually be able to stream the lessons inside the classrooms live and follow along as if they were in the classroom. Our teachers did not have to do that. And the fact that every single one of our teachers has agreed to do that is pretty phenomenal.
We've seen how Moss has prepared itself for Phase 2, but what about the rest of Dade and Broward County? The guidelines apply to them as well, so how are they being affected by this? Lamar Lewis Curry Middle School is a school in Miami-Dade County that has also had to make some drastic changes in order to be in compliance with the district's guidelines.
There is a lot being done using the CDC guidelines where we are putting signage everywhere for the students to keep their distance. I can see where some other students that are not self-directed may have some issues keeping up with online courses.
As we proceed to receive updates on the status of the Phase 2 physical reopening of schools, we can't wait to be reunited with our Moss fam once again. I'm Dylan Masvidal, signing off.
SP16, reopen schools.
Next up, we have Anthony Herrera displaying the struggles of our NBA teams continue to face. While choosing to fight for their human rights, these teams have become the embodiment of change on and off the court.
We need to live! My brothers need to live!
Black Lives Matter is in fact a political party.
we deserve to be fought for.
Terrorist organization. Back to the hood. When you're black, it's not a movement. It's a lifestyle.
Shut up and dribble.
Justice!
Racism's done. Let's just be
All
done
lives
with it.
can't matter till black lives matter.
We need our fathers and mothers to be by our side.
That changed the world.
Daddy changed the world.
Here we are outside the home of the three-time NBA champions, the Miami Heat. But what the team and the rest of the NBA are being the champions of now is something more important than the game of basketball: social justice. Since April of 2020, people nationwide have been protesting through the streets, with the Black Lives Matter message being the forefront of it all. These protests have been sparked by the killings of the unarmed African Americans by the police. Teams like the Heat have shown their support for the movement and have demanded the NBA organization take an action in the movement. Players are voicing their opinions and showing that this fight won't end until justice is served. The Black Lives Matter campaign has its roots extending far before 2020. On July 17, 2014, Eric Garner was accused of selling single cigarettes from packs without tax stamps. When the police got to him, they violently pinned him to the ground and choked him to his death. More recently, the movement had been building momentum ever since there were calls for justice following the deaths of Ahmaud Arbery, Breonna Taylor, and George Floyd. There have been more than 2,000 protests held across all 50 states. Due to how quickly the word was spreading and how many people all races joined the movement, the scale of support the Black Lives Matter movement received was significant. And even after time has passed, there are plenty of protesters still chanting the names of black victims and shouting demands for reform through social media.
Me having a African American son is another thing, you know, worried about is he's going to be judged for his color versus his mindset of how he thinks or how he perceives things in life. So, you know, I have to instill in him who he is and who he can become despite the controversies.
It should come to no surprise that the NBA has wholeheartedly taken a part in the movement since restarting the playoffs. They've spread the message of Black Lives Matter by having it written on the t-shirts of the players, as well as the courts that the players will be playing on. Not only that, but the Black Lives Matter is one of the 29 league-approved messages which the players can choose to have on the backs of their jerseys. The Miami Heat have released a new collection of shirts surrounding the movement, all include messages empowering the Black lives. They also announced that they will be donating all of the proceeds from the sales to 3 local nonprofit organizations: Black Girls Code, Health in the Hood, and the Florida Rights Restoration Coalition. The Miami Heat has even petitioned the city of Miami to use the American Lions Arena as a voting site for the upcoming elections.
We're going to respect as black people. So, you know, we want to put it on notice that black people want respect, want to be treated equal, and that's how it should be. That's how life should be. Everybody should be treated equal.
With the help the Black Lives Matter movement has received from not only regular people, but teams like the Miami Heat, we can only hope to continue inspiring change and finally receive justice for those who deserve it. From Mass in Depth, I'm Anthony Herrera, signing off.
Last up for today, Ximena Hidalgo raises awareness for National Suicide Prevention Month while curbing the stigma surrounding mental health. I had to learn to live with anxiety.
I wasn't close to my family.
My mom, she used to have epilepsy.
When we're younger, we think we're very untouchable.
With help from professionals, I am now comfortable and in control of my mind and body.
As we near the month of October, we also near the end of National Suicide Prevention Month, which despite its designated time, the month of September, is a conversation we should be having all year round. Today, we'll be shedding light on the stigma around mental health in hopes to help people overcome it. The topic of mental health is one frequently steered away from or put into a box. We need to remind ourselves and those around us that it's okay to get help and erase the negative stigma around therapy and self-help. As we slowly start to reintroduce ourselves into the physical outings of our daily lives, it's important to know the signs and symptoms of someone who may be struggling.
We should never assume someone is exaggerating that they have a mental condition, because many times exaggerating can be just a way of not wanting to show that something is happening. And I think it's important that you educate yourself on what is mental health, that it is not a sign of weakness, mental health can be a chemical imbalance in the brain. It can also be due to an event in a life, like a sudden loss. So I think that we should show compassion for someone when they are sick, and for those people who have mental health, because a lot of times stigma makes people feel ashamed. And the worst of all is that it prevents them from getting professional help.
While understanding the signs we should look for once we see each other in person, it's also important to take into account those of us who are still in their homes without the necessary tools to guide them. Learning to be kind to our minds isn't a one-way street, and there are various ways to gain access to a friend or a community that can provide us with tools to get better.
So through this platform, we always make sure that we let our freshmen know that we're not superiors, we're all equal, and we always assure them that they can get help, whether talking to us or our sponsor, or even just going to the BeHip.org website and finding out resources on how they can get help. My advice would be just to take it day by day. You can always ask someone for help if you need it. It's okay to be stressed here and then, but don't let it ruin your mood or get you down, because everything's going to get resolved.
Organizations and community centers have opened various accounts and hashtags, such as hashtag Ask a Therapist and Be the One To on virtual platforms, allowing for those tools to become accessible to people online. Alongside these words of wisdom and open grounds of communication developed through these virtual communities, we are given access to various ways of perfecting our mental health. As we get back into the normalcy of juggling our schoolwork with the new year starting, it's important to note that there are other options when we need someone to talk to just an office away.
You need to be educated. You need to, go in and educate yourself as to what the different mental illnesses are and have a better understanding so that then you could help others understand. You need to be careful what words you use, and be very much aware of your own prejudices. And, when you see somebody that is alone in a corner, include them. A lot of times it's just trying to get a positive thought in your mind and going with it, right? And making sure that you're living in the present, especially now with the pandemic. A lot of people are like thinking, oh my God, when are we going to get this vaccine? When are we going to be, and it gets very angsty and makes people very anxious, when you don't have control over things. All you have control is about how you feel about it. And so it is super important to just, stay positive, learn to breathe through it, stay in the present. It's important to know what is triggering that so you could keep away from those things as well.
Despite the struggles we face and the conditions we've been placed under, there's always somebody we can talk to. If there's anything quarantine has taught us, is that we might not know what's going on in each other's lives. But as we start to reunite again, we learn to be patient, understanding, and ready to listen. I'm Ximena Hidalgo, signing off.
Thank you guys for watching our first official episode of Moss in Depth. Stay tuned for many more stories to come this new school year.